I implore thee, drench my heart and my lips for your grace. I am persuaded, Lord, to love you. I have been changed to bless your name. I am constrained by this great gospel forever to worship thee.
song says, I am persuaded by this great gospel forever to worship thee. Anybody came to worship him today? Why don't you just give the Lord his worship? It's one thing to praise him, but it's another thing to worship him. All the rocks can praise him. The trees can clap their hands, but it takes real believers to worship him. Somebody came in the room to worship the Lord this morning. Certainly we thank God for everything that has transpired today. If you have your Bibles, if you would look with us in the Psalm 40. Psalm 40, and we will simply read into your hearing verse 1. Amen. Psalm 40 and verse 1. And it reads, I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. I waited patiently for the Lord, and he inclined unto me and heard my cry. You may be seated in the presence of the Lord. My brothers and sisters, one of the most difficult things that most of us struggle with is the idea of waiting. In fact about it, we live in a society now that encourages instantaneous gratification. We live in a day where we all struggle with waiting for anything. We want to eat and we want it right now. Consequently, we go to the fast food restaurants in order to indulge ourselves in a quick fix. But we discover that sometimes quick fixes are no good for long-term problems. Most of us struggle with the idea or the ideology of waiting because we want what we want and we want it when we want it. Many have gotten themselves into much trouble because instead of taking the long way and the right way, they've tried a shortcut that will lead to an immediate fix. But my brothers and sisters, the truth be told that good things come to those who wait. And I want you to understand today as I take my time, we can't hurry God. No, we just have to wait. We've got to trust him and give him time no matter how long it takes. Today, when we look at the 40th Psalm, we would discover that the psalmist found himself in a very difficult place in his life. He was at a point, a predicament in his life where he waited and was waiting on God to deliver him. And I want you to understand today that there are some things that only God can do for you and I. There are some things that only God will do. Well, when we look at the writer of this psalm, he finds himself in a pit situation. Now, a pit is a place that is dark, it's dreary, it's a hopeless place. Not only is a pit a hopeless place, but a pit is a helpless place. Because when one finds himself in a pit, there's no way to pull oneself up out of the pit. When you look at a pit situation, my brothers and sisters, there are no staircases in a pit. There is no elevator nor escalator in a pit, because a pit is a deep, dreary, low place that we sometimes find ourselves in life. And my brothers and sisters, I want you to understand that at some point or another, no matter who we are, no matter what we know, we'll all find ourselves in pit situations. But I want you to know tonight that God specializes in pits. Well, when we look at this particular psalm, we see that the writer himself, David, the one who was always praising and uplifting the name of the Lord, found himself in what he classified as a pit situation. This pit was a place, it was a place in verse 2 of horror. It was a place that was filled with muck and miry clay. And if you know anything about miry clay, it is like a quicksand. The more you try to come up out of it, the deeper you sink. Is there anybody in here that's been in a situation that the more you try to come up out of it, seemingly the lower you go down? I wish I had some witnesses here that say, Pastor, I have a testimony. I've been in some miry places. I've been in some quicksands in life. I've been in some bad and some hopeless situations, but God. The psalmist says that he found himself in a pit situation. Well, what do you do in a pit when there is no help around? There's nothing to pull up on. There's no way out on your own. What do you do in a pit? Well, some of us complain and we murmur and we frown and we become bitter and we become angry. But I want you to know that's not the solution. The psalmist tells us that in the pit is not the time for moaning and groaning and complaining. In a pit situation, it's time to release your faith. Is there anybody in here ever been in a situation that mandated, that required you to loose your faith? You say, if I'm going to come out of this, it's going to be by faith, because I realize that if I don't have faith, I'm not going to ever come out of this thing. But here the psalmist said that while he was waiting, he did something else. The psalmist released his faith. He said, I waited patiently for the Lord. And listen to what he says. He said, not only did he wait, he said, but he inclined unto me and heard my cry. That tells me that in the midst of his pit, the psalmist prayed and petitioned God. Can I say to you that there is power in prayer? It doesn't matter how deep your pit may be. It doesn't matter how horrible your pit may be. If you can learn how to pray and call God in faith, what I like about God, Dr. Penny, is he'll show up in the midst of your pit situation. I wish I had some witnesses here that say, I called on the Lord and I was in a hopeless situation. I was in a helpless situation, but I learned how to pray. And can I tell you something, my brothers and sisters? There's no place that teaches us how to pray like a pit situation. I wish I had some witnesses in here, because a pit situation will cause you to pray until you pray out of yourself. A pit situation will cause you to call on God like never before. You forget all about your cuteness. You forget all about your education. You forget all about your sophistication. And you learn how to say, Father, I stretch my hands to thee. There's no other help that I know. I wish I had some witnesses in the house who said, I called on God out of my pit situation. Oh, I thank God for the power of prayer today. Oh, I wish I had about 5 or 10 people over here that believe in the power of prayer and who can say prayer will bring you out every time. I wish I had somebody who said, baby, my back was against the wall. It looked like I wasn't going to ever come out, but I learned how to pray. In the midst of your pit, God will teach you how to pray. See, sometimes as long as we on level ground, we don't pray like we ought to pray. As long as things are going well, we don't pray like like we ought to pray. But sometimes God said, I got to teach you how to pray. And the best place to teach you is sometimes in a pit situation, where you know that you can't talk your way out of this. You can't climb your way out. You gotta pray your way out of this situation. The psalmist said, I called on the Lord. I cried. I cried to the Lord. I cried to the Lord. And maybe after you've cried to God, it's best that you just leave it alone. Because if God can't do anything with it, it can't be done. If God doesn't do it, there are some things that won't be done. After you've cried and you prayed and you've cried and you cried and you prayed. I know I have somebody in here that know what it's like to cry yourself to sleep at night and cry yourself up in the morning. After you prayed and you cried, it's best to just leave it in the hands of Jesus and say, now what I'm going to do is wait on you. Somebody right now, you're in a place of waiting on God. I stopped by to tell you that if you put it in his hands, just hold on a little while. Everything will be all right. He may not come when you want him, but I stopped by to tell you he has a prescribed time to show up. And when God shows up, he'll show out. I wish I had somebody with me that he'll show out and he'll show you out of your mess. But you got to learn how to hold on. I did not say, Dr. Penny, to hang on in there. I said hold on. If you hang in there, you might slip. But if you hold on, your change will come after a while. I wish Sam Cooke said your change will come. I stopped by to tell you that the psalmist said, if you wait on God, your change will come. Yeah. He says, I waited patiently. He said, I cried to the Lord. After you cried to God, that's sufficient. After you've told God all about it, that's sufficient. He said, then the next thing I did, I waited. I want you to understand, waiting is difficult when you want it to happen right now. But can I tell you what waiting does for us? Waiting builds in us character. You see, you cannot always give your children what they want as soon as they ask for it. Sometimes you've got to let them wait for it. Sometimes you've got to let them see what it is to do without it, so that when they get it, they'll appreciate it. You see, because if you've never gone without, you don't know what it's like to not have it. And baby, you don't appreciate it like somebody who has had to go without. But baby, when you learn in the midst of waiting, God builds us character. Don't you know that sometimes in the midst of waiting, that's when you are made the strongest? Because really, that's the time when your faith is under a test. That's the time when your faith really shows who you are. That's the time when it really tells, you know, it's okay to talk about I'm a faith walker and a faith talker when you got everything working for you. But baby, it's during that waiting time when you're in a pit, that's the time that really tells who you really are, where your faith really is. Because I want you to know that under pressure, things could happen. But here, the psalmist says, I waited patiently on the Lord. Now understand me, when you're waiting on God, you've got to know who you're waiting on. Because waiting on God is different from waiting on man. Because waiting on God, let me say this, when you're waiting on God, delay does not mean denial. Some of you will catch up with that when you get home. Your delay does not necessarily equate denial. It does not mean because God has delayed that he has denied you. So that tells me that in the midst of your pit, when you prayed, you've got to be persistent and tenacious. You've got to keep on believing, hope even against hope, because you've got to know for yourself that I'm not going to let God go until he blesses me. So I'm not going to stop praying. I'm going to be persistent. I'm going to be tenacious. I'm going to keep on praying even when it looks as though things will never turn around for me. He says, I waited patiently on the Lord. I cried to the Lord and I waited, and he said the Lord inclined his ear. How many know today that the Lord will listen to us? The Lord, in fact about it, God said, call unto me and I will answer thee, and I will show you great and mighty things. But he said, you've got to call me in faith. The psalmist said, I wasn't playing games. I wasn't praying a Mickey Mouse prayer. He said, I called on God out of desperation. He said, I was at a very difficult point in my life. He said, I wasn't going through a formality. He said, I wasn't praying out of ritualistic tradition. He said, I was in need, and I knew that the only person that could help me was God himself, and I prayed like I had lost my mind. Somebody in here, you got to learn how to pray your way out of your sophisticated self, and pray your way out of your cute self, and get out of that Mickey Mouse stage of prayer, and learn how to really call on heaven for intervention. The psalmist, he said, I prayed. He said, I was in a pit. I prayed. I was persistent in my prayer. And he said, not only was I persistent in my prayer, but I was patient. Can I tell you something? You've got to be patient. Can I say that again? We've got to learn patience. And sometimes our trials teach us patience. Sometimes God said, I'm going to let you stay there a little while because I'm building character and I'm building in you patience and persistence. To let you know that I am not a bellboy, a cosmic bellboy that's coming to your beck and call when you say, but to let you know that I have set timing to bring you out of every situation. Can I tell you, the children of Israel cried unto the Lord, and they cried a long time, and they were down in Egypt, but God let them stay there because they had a period of time that God said, I've got to teach you something in Egypt, and I can't bring you out until the time has been accomplished. Some of you are in what you're in because the time has not yet been accomplished, but God said, I have a set time, I have a set purpose, and I have a set place to bring you out of your pit, to bring you out of your situation. If you could just do me a favor right now and tap your neighbor and say, neighbor, God has a set time. You just wait on him. See, the problem is we want to wiggle our way out of situations that God has set up to teach us something. But baby, you can't wiggle your way out of some things. You just got to wait until the Lord shows up. You can call whatever hotline you want to call. You can get on whatever prayer line you want to get on. The Lord said, until I can teach you what I need to teach you, you're going to be right where you are because I got to bring out the best in you. And the best place to bring it out is in a pit situation. In fact about it, some of us, our own mouths have big pit situations. And God said, well, you know, you got yourself in some of this stuff, and since you're there, I'm just going to teach you something while you're there. Yeah, you know, Grandma would put it like this: a hard head makes a soft behind. Or she'll put it like this: you make your bed, you have to lie in it. In other words, you just got to toughen it up and deal with it until the Lord decides to bring you out. Because some stuff God didn't put you in, you got in yourself. But God said, since you wiggled your way in, I'm going to leave you there for a little while to teach you some stuff about you and about me, and to let you know that you just got to learn how to wait on me. Because sometimes, my brothers and sisters, we get ourselves into pits by choice. You know, sometimes we get ourselves into pits because we don't want to wait on God. We want to go ahead of God. Can I put it? So you let her know when God is talking to you, because sometimes you're talking to yourself. And you will lead yourself right into a pit situation. Well, Pastor, I love him. I love her. That's the biggest pit you ever ran across in your life. You go ahead on and love your way right into that pit, and you're going to find out that it's not all that it's cracked up to be. You're going to find that instead of it being a ribbon in the sky, it'll be nightmare on Elm Street. You just go ahead and rush yourself into some of these pits. You're going to find out, baby, that it ain't all that you think. somebody threw a rock at me or what, but I'm going to keep on preaching. Somebody pearl must have jumped off. I hope that's what it was, because I don't want to rebuke anybody. Thank God I have on eyeglasses. I would have lost the eye just now. Better stop wearing those tight clothes to church. Somebody button or something popped on. They that wait upon the Lord. David said, I waited on the Lord. He said, I waited patiently for the Lord. And he said, while I was waiting, I called on the name of the Lord. I stopped by to tell somebody here today, you may be in the midst of a pit situation. But if you pray and don't stop praying, the song said, pray and don't stop praying. Because your deliverance, your breakthrough is on the way. The psalmist said, I did my part and the Lord showed up. And he said, when God heard me, he showed up just when I needed him most. Is there anybody in here was just about at your breaking point? But the Lord showed up just in a nick of time. And the psalmist said, he brought me up also out of the horrible pit, out of the miry clay. He said, a place where the enemy thought I was going to perish and die. But the Lord said, not so, because just when the enemy thought he would take you out, the Lord said, I will show up in your situation. Can you do me a favor and say, Lord, I'm waiting on you. Can't nobody do me like you can. He said, he showed up and he brought me out. Is there anybody waiting on the Lord to bring you out? Can I tell you something? Can't nobody deliver you like the Lord can. Can nobody bring you out like the Lord can? I don't know what kind of pit you're in, but I can tell you, can't nobody bring you out like God can. Somebody said, well, you just don't know. I've been in this place a long time, but I stopped by to tell you, it doesn't matter how long you've been there. What really matters is God showing up. Because when God showed up, something has got to happen. Can I get a witness? Somebody here, you feel like every time you climb up 2 steps, you slide back 20 steps. But can I tell you something? Hold on. Your help is on the way. The psalmist said, I waited on the Lord. He showed up and brought me out. But listen to what he did. Listen to what he said. He said, in the midst of my pit situation, the Lord showed up and he promoted me. Can I tell you something? That how you respond to your pit sometimes determines your promotion. I wish I had somebody here. Say, Lord, I'm just going to wait on you. I know you have a promotion. I'm in the pit, but I'm waiting on my promotion. Is there anybody waiting on your promotion? You want to tell somebody, don't worry about my pit. Because my pit is my testimony when I get to my promotion. That's why you better not hate on my glory. pit prepares me for my promotion. I'm going to the next level. He set my feet upon a rock. That sounds like promotion. I came from sinking sand. I came from muck and miry. I came from sinking sand. And now, look where I stand. On a solid rock. Is there anybody here? Say, oh Christ, the solid rock. I stand. All of the ground is sinking sand. No more sinking. I'm going high. I waited on God. Now I'm going higher. I'm sorry. I'm not waiting on you. I'm not waiting on you. I'm not waiting on you. Not waiting on you. I'm waiting on you. Better look up and say, Lord, I repent for waiting on people. They're disappointed. They were limited. But I'm waiting on the God who's able. Anybody here know he's able? God, I'm waiting on you. And because I'm waiting on you, I can anticipate promotion. But then let me tell you, as I run to my seat, the psalmist said I was promoted, but my promotion brought about something else. Because out of the pit, I got a new song. I got played. You better look at your neighbor and say, if you're in the pit, you better praise your way out of the pit. Is there anybody gonna praise him? I'm gonna praise him when I'm down. Praise him when I'm up. Thank God I waited on the Lord. He showed up. Now I can praise him. Is there anybody wanna praise God? Thank you. Thank you. How you brought me. Thank you. How you taught me. Thank you for picking me up. Thank you for putting running in my feet. Thank you for putting clapping in my hands. I got joy unspeakable, full of glory. I got a story to tell. Look where the Lord has brought me from. He brought me from the pit. You better tell somebody. From the pit to the palace, from sinking sand to a solid rock. and waiting on God. God will never disappoint. If you're waiting on human agents will let you down. But if you learn how to wait on God, I promise you, He will not make you ashamed. Now let me say to you, waiting does not mean shiftlessness, because God is not going to do it all. There's some things you got to do for yourself. But if you wait on God, He'll strengthen you. He'll empower you. He'll give you favor. Oh yes, He will. He'll give you an avenue. He'll bring you out. But while you're waiting in faith, make sure you're waiting on Him while you're waiting on Him. What do you mean waiting on Him while you're waiting on Him? Make sure you're serving Him as you're waiting on Him. Don't be weary in giving your best in service while you're waiting on God. Because sometimes in the midst of serving, we have to still wait. In the midst of giving, we still have to wait. In the midst of sacrifice, sometimes we still have to wait on the Lord. But I promise you, if you wait on Him, He has a set time to bring you out. The doors of the church are open. There are 3 ways you may come.